The Congressional Budget Office has completed its first comprehensive review of the nation's fiscal future since the Fiscal Responsibility Act became law. And in the CBO's assessment, America's long-term fiscal outlook is fundamentally no less concerning now than it was before the debt deal was passed. But is that really true? Economic uncertainty means you have to keep up with what's happening. Make sure you subscribe and we'll keep you in the know. The day before President Biden signed the Fiscal Responsibility Act, he exclaimed, "We're cutting spending and bringing deficits down." A group of Republican leaders led by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy released a statement that said the new legislation represents transformative change to how Washington operates. This begs the question: has transformative change been realized as a result of the new law? Probably not, according to the Congressional Budget Office. And based on the CBO's most recent assessment, America's long-term fiscal outlook is as precarious now as it was before the debt deal. In February, before the debt deal, the CBO forecast the amount of federal debt held by the public would reach 195% of GDP by 2053. According to the CBO's most recent analysis, that percentage has dropped, but not by that much. The CBO now says that federal debt held by the public is on pace to reach 181% of GDP by 2053, down from 195%, but still nearly twice the size of America's economy. As for the annual budget deficits, which essentially are the reason we have a national debt, the CBO projects those could grow every year for the next 30 years. The agency also projects the deficit could reach 10% of GDP by 2053, which would be nearly double this year's level. The CBO has determined the Fiscal Responsibility Act will reduce budget deficits by about $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years. That's not chicken feed. However, deficits are on pace to average $2 trillion per year over the coming decade. Referring to the new law, Dennis Ippolito, a public policy professor and fiscal expert at Southern Methodist University, recently said, "If you're worried about the deficit and debt problem, this thing does nothing." The Congressional Budget Office is not the only government agency that has issued a concerning report on the nation's fiscal future after the passage of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. In testimony before Congress last month, Jeff Arkin of the Government Accountability Office, the supreme audit institution of the federal government, told elected officials that the nation is on a, quote, unsustainable fiscal path. Arkin related long-term debt to GDP projections that sounded even more concerning than those of the CBO. Arkin told elected officials that in the assessment of the Government Accountability Office, we project that this ratio could reach more than 219% of GDP by 2051, absent any changes in revenue and spending policies. The good news is the passage of the Fiscal Responsibility Act means the risk of debt default has subsided for the foreseeable future. But in the opinion of two of the nation's leading federal budget watchdog agencies, America's concerning long-term fiscal future effectively remains unchanged. That's why I suggest you take the time to learn more about what's really going on in the economy by attending our exclusive one-on-one web conference at AugustaPreciousMetals.com/webconference.